Hello. Today we're going to talk about solving absolute values and compound inequalities. So let's review a little bit. If we have an absolute value and absolute value of x equals 3, we know that there's got to be two answers. X equals 3 or negative 3. And if we went to graph these, we would put 2 points at 3 and negative 3 and put two solid dots right there. Now what happens if we change this so that this becomes an inequality sign? So if absolute value of x is smaller than or equal to 3, what happens? What changes? What's the difference? Well, we know from solving these that we come up into two cases, and you'll have the first case will be x is smaller than or equal to 3. But the other case that happens is that in your negative case, the sign switches. And so x will be greater than or equal to negative 3. So the sign flips and in your negative case. So this graph changes so that we're not just shading 3 and negative 3. X is smaller than or equal to 3, so we're going to shade all the numbers smaller than it on this side, and all the numbers bigger than negative 3, x is greater than or equal to negative 3, and this forms a compound inequality. And this particular is called an AND. An AND has to fill in both x is smaller than 3 and x is greater than or equal to negative 3. Okay? Now take a look what happens if we flip the sign. Say I'm given x, absolute value of x is greater than or equal to 3. Well, when we solve this, we know that x is going to be greater than or equal to 3. There's our positive case. And then x has to be, remember the negative case, you flip the sign and then make it a negative 3. So flip the sign, make it negative 3. That means we're going to come down and graph this. X has to be bigger than or equal to 3, solid dot. And we're shading bigger than that, 3. And then x is smaller than or equal to negative 3 means we have a solid dot at 3, negative 3, and we're shading to the left. This is going to be an OR statement. An OR statement means that you can either satisfy one or the other. Either x is bigger than 3, positive 3, or x has to be smaller than negative 3. You get one or the other, where the AND statement satisfies both. So they may also ask you to write an absolute value from all numbers between negative 8 and 8. Well, this is going to be the opposite of what we just showed. So that means it's nice being it's plus 8 and negative 8. That means we're going to have an absolute value, and it's going to have to, of our x, has to be equal to 8 somehow, so that you get a plus and minus 8. The question is what's the sign? Well, graph it. We know we're going to have a point here, and actually, it says in between them, it doesn't include them, so we're going to leave these open circles, and we're shading in between them. So draw your interval, draw your graph. That helps a lot. So then look at the positive case. The positive case is 8, and we're shading less than that. So that means my x has to be less than that 8. Now, do I need an equal sign? No, because it's open circle. And that's all you need to write. There, now you have an absolute value equation, inequality, that that satisfies all numbers between -8 and 8. So we'll solve this inequality. And when we solve an inequality such as this, remember, we go back to our two cases. The first case is going to be the positive case. So the 4k minus 8 is smaller than 20. And we treat it just like that. We don't change anything for the positive case. We just drop the bars. The negative case is going to look similar. It'll be 4k minus 8. But we're going to flip the sign for our negative case. So we're going to flip the sign and make it negative. After making these two cases, now we can just solve these. So we will add 8 to both sides, plus 8. That leaves a 4k is smaller than 12. No, 28, sorry. And then divide by 4, and k has to be smaller than 7. On this side, we'll do the exact same thing, solve this equation. Plus 8, we'll have a 4k left is greater than, and now this one will be a -12. Divide by 4, k will be greater than -3. And so to graph this, we'll have a -3 down here. We'll have a +7 up here. And we will have k is smaller than 7, so open circle at 7, shading smaller numbers. We'll have k is greater than -3, open circle at -3, and shading bigger numbers. And where these two meet, there's our graph. Being that they meet in between, we can also say that this is going to be an AND statement. And that's our final answer. If they don't give you an absolute value, they just solve the inequality and they give you two different equations, that's okay. Solve the equations just as they are. So y minus 3, let's plus 3 to both sides, and y will be greater than 4, or, and then come over to this equation and solve that one. Minus 2, y will be smaller than -1. Graph your equations. And open circle at -1, open circle at 4. It's an OR, and so we're shading bigger than 4 and smaller than -1. So I hope this helps solving some inequalities. Thanks.